Excellent. Good afternoon, Awesemo MLB fans. I wasn't actually watching Tyler give me that cue there, so apologies for being a quick second late on the intro, but good afternoon. Happy to have you all hanging out with us. Terry McBride here with Alex Awesemo Baker himself and Gundacker, ready to break down what is not a very large MLB DFS slate, but it looks like an interesting one to me anyway, as I was going through some of it. So we're going to go position by position today, which you might have heard us say on the way in. A little bit of a different look, but kind of little time left on the board to go through the slate, take our time going through all the different options. We'll talk stacks, we'll talk pitchers, we'll get into it. But first, Gun, how you doing, man? It's been a week and change since we were on a show together.
A week, and we probably have one win as a Yankee team since then. So tough week for us, right?
Yeah. I intentionally am not wearing any Yankees gear today, hoping that maybe that's the difference. And I don't necessarily believe in luck and things like that, but any little thing I can do to help the team might as well. Alex, how's the week going for you?
It's good, man. Last night was a really interesting MLB slate because we had that Boston game, which had some lingering weather. And I built my lineups well ahead of time because I wanted to play some NBA too. And I was like, it's looking a little dicey, but then as it got closer and closer to lock, it started looking better and better. And eventually, all my lineups are locked in without many players in my game. So I went into the Fantasy Cruncher late swap optimizer, and I just forced in stacks of Boston and Toronto.
Yeah.
Because I was like, everyone's probably off them because of the weather. It was the brilliant strategy. That didn't work, so it was a fun one.
And I'm sure they were all just perfectly constructed Cubs lineups that you changed from, right? Because that's the case that's for me every time. Yeah, that was an interesting spot. I stuck to my guns kind of the same way. I was building for that one and was not building for NBA last night, so I was kind of on top of it, just sitting there watching the whole time, sweating that I was going to end up with a bunch of canceled, postponed game lineups. But yeah, I was really happy that it went through, and then not too happy at the end result. Didn't have enough Cubbies in my life. I was on the other side of that one, as we talked about yesterday, kind of on the Mets bats. But we'll get into everything today, guys. We've got a good show coming up. If you guys miss your favorite shows on the Awesemo Network, we're covering a lot of ground these days, a lot of different sports. Sometimes there's things going on at the same time. You can't always catch everything. Life gets in the way. But you can catch everything by catching up with it on your favorite podcast network. Download every one of our favorite shows, except for the Live Before Locks. Everything with a little bit of shelf life goes up on your favorite podcast network. If you get in there and leave us a 5-star review, we're raffling off a week of Awesemo Plus every week. So if you go in, leave a 5-star review, leave your contact info, name, or Twitter address, something like that. It's something easy for us to find you. We will get in touch with you if you are our big winner. That entry is good for 1 year. So once again, once a week, we're giving away 1 week of Awesemo Plus to people who leave us a 5-star review on their favorite podcast network. We're brought to you today by Jock Market, you guys. It's an awesome new site. It's turning DFS into a stock market. It's a lot of fun. Really new, creative way to approach this. Buy and sell shares of players throughout the games in real time based on your own analysis, based on what's going on in the game. So let's say the Warriors are up big, right? They're going to take Steph Curry off the floor, put in some of these scrubs. Jordan Poole gets out there. Well, you can sell Steph if you think that's coming, right? So you get out of your shares of Steph Curry, you cash out of him early, buy, sell, hold based on your own analysis throughout the game with guaranteed cash outs for all shares at the end of the night. We got a little promo code going with them, little teaser there. It's Awesemo20. We'll get more into that later on. Like and subscribe, you guys. We got free ownership today on the site. We've got free NBA and NHL projections. We've got free MMA fighter rankings for the big fight coming up this weekend, which if you guys somehow haven't heard, we've got a promo going for that as well. MMA DFS, UFC 261, Usman, UFC 261, Usman versus Masvidal, not UFC, man. Coming up April 24th, we've got a great deal on our premium content. Through fight night, use promo code UFC261, gets you half off your first month of Awesemo MMA. That's our projections, our ownership, top fighters tool, everything that we've got out there, and it helps you build lineups, guys. I can say that from experience because I don't know anything about MMA DFS, and I have won with these tools. So get in there, promo code UFC261, gets you everything that you need through fight night, 50% off your first month. That'll get you through 2 upcoming pay-per-views. Guys, I think that covers the business. We've got a small little 5-gamer on tap for us. Like I said, we'll go position by position, but just from an overarching kind of a sense, on a small slate like this, Alex, any special considerations for you, both from just a small slate perspective or specific to today?
So what I'm thinking on small slates is like a lot of times the chalk is like that much higher owned. So I'm looking at the top stacks tool, and 23% of the ownership is going to one team, the Mets, out of 10 teams. So just by logic, like each team on average has 10% ownership share. So this is 2.3 times that. I do have them as the best likelihood to go off tonight, but we got to think that also a lot of teams are stacking 2 teams. A lot of lineups are stacking 2 teams. So this may be more like 40 to 50% of lineups that have Mets. So that creates a lot of interesting leverage if you decide to not pick them. But then there's this top stack for a reason too. So that's kind of the main thing we're trying to reconcile on these slates.
Yeah, you run into a little bit of that potential opportunity cost, but it's a little bit less so, I think, in a sport like baseball that's so event-based, so variable. We don't sweat it maybe quite as much, or at least it's maybe not quantifiable as much as if you're skipping one of these high-end NBA players on a point per minute at a low salary. That's a lot more quantifiable and maybe a bigger mistake to make. So it's definitely an interesting consideration. That was a big thing that leapt out to me as well. On the other side of that game, I think the Cubs are also very interesting again. So we'll get into some of that as we talk about the different players. Gunn, what about you? How are you approaching this slate just in an overarching kind of a sense? Anything stand out about maybe the pitching, since Alex focused on the stacks, and we'll lead into pitching from there?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest pitching question mark today for me was what to do with Alex Cobb. His first 2 games are looking like a ace level, nonsensical. Like the metrics are just dumb. His split finger fastball is just is playing wiffle ball out there, and I don't want to overreact it to a 2-game sample size, and he still has some hard contact problems, especially against righty. So I guess teetering that seesaw between playing Alex Cobb or playing some Astros is kind of the debate that I started at my first glance on this slate, and I'm hoping to talk my way through one side.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us are kind of trying to do that with this slate, just the way it lays out. We've got one really, really good pitcher, and then, in my opinion, a whole lot of mediocrity. And we've got some mediocrity that's in good spots. We've got some that are in pretty bad-looking spots. We've got some up-and-comers. I don't want to bring down a Christian Javier, but he's not in the easiest matchup. So it's a really interesting slate for pitching, and from my perspective, I think that's probably a good pivot right into talking about pitching off the top. That's our first position up on the board here. So, guys, as you're looking at the pitching slate, Alex, I would imagine that we're all in agreement that Walker Buehler is the standout overall pitcher in terms of pitching talent. He is by far the highest priced pitcher on this slate on both DraftKings and Fanduel. Alex, does it make sense to go to Walker Buehler despite what is fairly significant ownership, just as in terms of the standout spot or the standout talent, despite a tough spot against San Diego? Or are you able to get to other pitchers and other combinations of 2 guys on the DraftKings slate?
Well, I think as far as plays, he's the highest projected, but it's just by a tiny bit, and the value isn't that great because he is so expensive. What I'm seeing with Buehler is his strikeout rate is down a lot this year. Last year, he was at 27% over 32 innings. So far this year, over 18 innings, he's at 17%. So I'm looking at the swinging strike rate to find out, is this bad luck or is he just not playing as well? So it's down from 12% last year to 10% this year. So I do feel like there is reason to believe he's not going to reach that same strikeout rate as last year from that number. So I'd be interested to hear what you guys think, maybe what metrics you're looking at to try to figure out what to expect from Buehler this year.
Gunn, did you have a chance to look into any of the underlying marks on Buehler, see what might be going on there? That strikeout rate differential definitely stood out to me as well as I was looking at the slate when I was writing my article earlier. Did a little bit of a piece on Buehler, and obviously is the standout play at the top of the slate there. So I'm just curious, Gunn, did you find anything as I was looking? I'm just kind of poking around on StatCast as Alex is talking about it. And it looks like a lot of the spin rate stuff is kind of held up. So I'm not seeing anything different there. Did you notice anything maybe in the pitch mix or anything stood out there?
No, nothing there. Just the Sierra and the XFIP are elevated so far this year. His ERA is actually almost half of what a Sierra and XFIP would be. And the thing is, last year his Sierra and XFIP was sitting at 4 as well. So it's not like he was a crazy low Sierra XFIP guy. We kind of want him to get more close to that 2019, 2018 Walker Buehler. So with the swing and strike rate being sub 10%, I'm definitely concerned. He also has a 10.5% barrel rate so far amongst qualified pitchers, which is not what you want, especially going against the Padres in back-to-back starts. So I'm definitely concerned about Buehler, and I think the name value alone might make him over-owned versus what his metrics is saying where he's at right now. But yeah, I think that that could create an incredible leverage or game theory opportunity with some Padres bats. I'm curious to see what the Padres lineup looks like.
Yeah, definitely be nice to have that Padres lineup. Should have it, hopefully around lock or before that. We've been getting them even for the West Coast games on time this year. So just looking at some of the underlining stuff on Buehler in StatCast here, it does look like he's throwing his fastball more, and he's added spin to it, but it's less effective just in terms of the swing and miss that he's getting. He's down to a 13.4% whiff rate from a 26.1 on the pitch last year, putting guys away 13% of the time with it compared to 24% of the time with it last year. But he's throwing it 60.1% of the time compared to 53.8, and it's down more than 1.5 miles per hour. So that's concerning. Looks like he's mixed up the degree to which he throws his slider as well. Just changed up a little bit about the pitch mix there, throwing fewer cutters in here as well, and a little bit more on the curveball. So really focused on the curve and the four-seamer, but maybe there's something to losing a little bit off the fastball here and the way that it's working and the dynamics of the pitch that's really impacting him. So that'll be curious to watch. And definitely, to your point, it is a pretty tough matchup anyway against a pretty good Padres team here. We see the Padres, they're around league average, if memory serves, in terms of the strikeouts against righties this year. I'm just trying to sort this column here. So regardless, it's a pretty good Padres lineup. I completely lost what I was looking for in that chart there. But Alex, does that lead you to, if we're not necessarily going to Walker Buehler, if we're trying to undercut the field, does that lead you to Padres stacks against him here? Or is that a spot where you're looking to maybe get away from the game entirely?
Probably not looking a ton at Padres stacks. So I think the lineup is very strong. We're better than average power and contact. So I think the talent is good, but the matchup versus LA is is kind of tough. Just because he's not getting a ton of strikeouts doesn't necessarily mean he's pitching poorly. And the pricing on San Diego is pretty high, so I know it can be tempting to stack against a chalk pitcher that we don't have, but I feel like there might be better spots.
And Gunn, what about you on the Padres side of things in terms of throwing some bats if you're looking to maybe play that leverage game against Buehler here? The stat I was looking for was this year's strikeout rate. And the reason I didn't see them because I was expecting them in the middle, and they were actually at the top of the board, best in the league against right-handed pitching with only a 20.1% strikeout rate. So again, limiting the strikeouts against righties. The run creation's down a little bit, 4% below average team WRC plus. The ISO is actually surprisingly down, just a 0.125 ISO. So that's a little surprising to see out of San Diego, but I think that's, we lost Tatis for a little bit of time in there out of the sample. So I imagine some of that can be tied to him. What are you doing with Padres bats here just in terms of throwing them against Buehler, Gunner? Is that a spot for you?
Yeah, it's just one of those mass spots. You don't it doesn't pre-flop look like a blow-up spot for the Padres offense, but it doesn't look like a ceiling spot for Buehler. The Padres had that series against the Dodgers. I mean, it felt like a playoff series, and everyone brought their A game. I would imagine that this kind of repeats, just a different set of scenery. And then, we're not dealing with crazy temps so far. So maybe that ISO is due to come up. Like I said, Walker Buehler, I believe he's top 5, top 6 so far in hard contact, and the barrel rate's over 10%. So there is some solo dolos maybe in there, but you believe that this Dodgers bullpen is strong enough, and overall it's not not likely to be a shootout. So I probably wouldn't rely too heavily on stacks unless they just had a lot of expendable lineups. But I certainly would probably just bet on some talent to be in the player pool as one-off, some Tatis, some Machado, somebody like that. And I would be leaning more towards the Dodgers offense here. But yeah, Buehler's it just seems like it could be a average game from both sides, and that's okay with me.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it's projecting, honestly, for me. It's just, Buehler still stands out as the top option, the top guy in terms of talent, top guy in terms of projection, but it's not like he's projecting out like he would be for a matchup against, let's say, Seattle or somebody like that. So he is kind of, for me anyway, in line with some of the other options on the slate, which is making it really interesting. I was talking before the show started about where my distribution for Buehler is going to be on Fanduel tonight, where we're only rostering one pitcher. And I'm really curious to see that myself. I haven't made that decision yet, and I'm not sure how it'll come out in the wash through my process, but there are interesting options on the board, I'll say. Alex, it looked like on the board when I was looking at it earlier that Nick Pivetta from Boston going up against those Mariners is the number 2 on our top starters tool. In terms of your excitement level about throwing Pivetta out there, is that your first pivot? Is that your first go-to guy if you're not going to Walker Buehler in a roster, particularly on FanDuel where we're only getting one guy, or are you looking elsewhere?
So the interesting thing about today's slate is it looks like Pivetta, Buehler, and Sanchez are all about equal projected ownership. So Pivetta is coming in at around 45% on Draftkings. I mean, the control for Pivetta is always an issue, where this year he's only pitched 3 games, but his walks per 9 innings is 6.7. I think the average for pitching is like 2 to 3. So he just has had no control, and over the past few seasons, below average in that regard as well. So a pretty scary guy to be picking, but on the positive note, his swinging strike rate is up this year, even though his strikeout rate is down a tiny bit. And that's making me think that maybe he's been getting a little unlucky with strikeouts so far this year. And the Seattle lineup has a little bit better than average strikeouts. But the main thing is they're just not a very good team. So I think there's definitely factors on both sides, which makes me think it's just kind of an average spot for Pivetta, which may be good enough on today's slate to make him worth picking.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we're at. It's slate of average pitchers outside of Buehler, like we started off with, and he could certainly be the best one out of the bunch. He's going up against the Mariners team that is second overall in baseball, dating back to the start of the 2019 season in strikeout rate against right-handed pitchers. It was 2, but don't quote me on that part. It's in my column. Gunn, are you seeing this one the same way? Given that, we know Nick Pivetta is the same pitcher that's put up a 1.53 whip last season, a 5.19 xFIP. The year before that, 93 innings, a 5.47 xFIP, 1.52 whip. So like Alex said, not a lot of control here. There are strikeouts available against a heavy strikeout matchup. Is Pivetta a spot for you, or is he a little bit too frightening?
Pivetta always seems like he's way more popular than the metrics say he should be. Like going back to 2019, his Sierra and his xFIP has been really, really high. The whip is really, really high. Like, yeah, you see some flashes of strikeout potential, but I always just feel like he gets more ownership, like he's overvalued. With that said, man, does this slate make you make some uncomfortable decisions at pitching? And I really hate to be that guy, but I probably have both sides of this. I'm gonna have some Pivetta, and I'm probably gonna have some Mariners and Fenway. And that's the only way I can really get around it. Choosing one pitcher is hard enough. Choosing 2 for DraftKings, man, that's going to be a chore. So it's hedge life tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting on the DraftKings slate getting to 2 of these guys. That's why I'm happy I'm playing on FanDuel, where I only have to worry about getting to one of them. A lot of that's going to probably end up in Walker Buehler, like we touched on. I'm not sure how much Pivetta I'm going to get to. He projects differently for me than what I assume Alex is getting for him. Based on his ranking on the board, but he's definitely in play just based on the matchup, based on the lack of other good options that I really like. Is there a pitcher, Gun, that you're excited about after Nick Pivetta, after Walker Buehler, who we've talked about? Who's option number 3 if you were creating this list?
So, I mean, looking at the Awesemo ownership projections, it might be Alex Cobb. I thought there'd be a little bit more of the chase mentality going on, but through 2 starts, he's kind of had a really, really, I wrote in my notes, a stanky split finger fastball. In game 1 against the White Sox, a 19.6% swinging strike rate, a 70.4% first pitch strike. In game 2 against the Royals, 18.6% swinging strike rate. He has a 3-to-1 ground ball to fly ball ratio. Before that last start, he said that he was managing a blister and he had an extra day of rest and he still went out there and threw a gem. With that said, the Royals, I mean, they let Lance Lynn go CG on him. So, the Royals have had, down games. So I don't want to overreact to that. And he still has a high hard contact rate allowed. The barrel rate's at 7%, which isn't, horrendous. But if he is going to bring that type of swing and strike rate potential, I know it's only 2 games, and he's not going to be, a top-owned pitcher, that might be where I get a little different. I don't like to pitch against the Astros, especially the Astros at home. Not saying anything, but I feel like I might take a couple of dabs on that first couple starts on him, and hopefully he continues that crazy split finger fastball and get those crazy numbers.
Alex, you buying into that Cobb story as well?
Yeah, I mean, this is so interesting because this is a guy that I feel like hasn't been good in the past years. He's been around a while too. He's an older guy, so this is kind of out of nowhere, but we do see that in MLB, and it can be a little bit easier to buy into than other sports. The main thing I'm seeing is his swinging strike rate is up a ton this year. It's actually elite levels over the first 2 starts, where his swinging strike rate is 19%. Even if that's fluky, you still got to expect a really good strikeout rate for him. So the one counterpoint is Houston's lineup is one of the worst in the league for getting strikeouts. So I do like him as a contrarian option, where I feel like some of the guys who are optimizing might not land on him because of the matchup and if they don't buy into this recent performance as much. But I think there's potential here. So I'm thinking that it's an interesting leverage spot.
Yeah, that's appealing to me in the leverage side of the conversation. What definitely worries me is that Houston lineup in terms of their ability to produce runs and their ability to limit strikeouts. 21.2% strikeout rate against righties this season, the 3rd best in baseball. Going back to the start of 2019, they are the best in baseball with only an 18.6% strikeout rate. That's a pretty significantly different strikeout rate than a lot of these other teams. I believe the second place team is right around 20. So there's a couple percentage points difference there. They are elite at avoiding strikeouts against right-handed pitching, but with a lack of options and needing to find some leverage points on the slate, I think it makes a lot of sense to get to Cobb, who is a very uncomfortable pitcher for me. I do like Christian Javier on the other side of this one, particularly on Fanduel, where it only costs us $7,300. I'm getting a pretty decent projection, despite a lineup that I don't love throwing pitchers at. This is a pretty decent Angels lineup. 9,600 is a little uncomfortable on the Draftkings slate. Alex, talk to me about Christian Javier. Are you getting to any of him?
Yeah, I think he's interesting because the price on Draftkings is so high, and I don't think he really deserves that. On FanDuel, much more reasonable at 7,300 than Draftkings 9,600. The matchup versus the Angels is pretty bad for strikeouts because the bottom of the order in most lineups is good, but these guys don't strike out much. His strikeout rate this year is up to 31%, which is encouraging. So I think the ownership looks pretty good. I'm not over the moon on him, but if you want to go with a cheap stack that's popular on DraftKings, then Javier makes sense because you're going to have the money to spend and you want a guy that's a little bit lower owned. On FanDuel, he's a guy that if he fits your build, then I have no reason to not go with him.
Yeah, tricky spot against that Angels lineup, but again, it's just another one where he stands out a little bit for me in terms of projection, and there's not that many places to go. Angels 5th best in baseball this season, 22% strikeout rate against righties, creating runs 17% better than league average against righties. A little bit tricky there. We'll get into some bats in a second, guys, but that's several of the top pitchers on the board. Going into kind of the dregs here, we've got Trevor Williams going for the Cubbies against the Mets. We've got Justin Dunn against the Red Sox. Aaron Sanchez, I think, is probably the next best option on the board going down the list, pitching for the Giants against the Miami Marlins. Gunn, what do you think about Aaron Sanchez in this? Any reason to get excited about this against a Marlins lineup that sometimes can be good to attack?
Yeah, I mean, it's Oracle Park. It looks like it'll be it's the second coolest temperature game. It's been historically the top pitcher's park. Yeah, if on DK, if you think he gets the 14, 15 fantasy points, and even today, like it's easy to look at a 9K pitcher that you would never pay 9K for on DraftKings and just like I can't pay 9K for him. But value is kind of subjective if pitching is trash. Like if a 20-point fantasy point game is the highest score on the slate for pitching, then it's worth 9K that night. So if I have to get out of my comfort and pay 9K for someone I would never do, I might have to bite the bullet on that one. But Sanchez 7,100. Could I get 5-6, maybe sliding to win and a little under strikeout per inning potentially? The swinging strike rate isn't crazy good. His ERA is a little bit better than the Sierra and xFIP, but it's not like he's been horrendous, and he's got a really, really great ground ball rate. He's been throwing strikes, so a good chance to eat some innings in a top pitcher's park. And yeah, like you said, the Marlins not really something to run away from, especially considering the environment and the stadium. So I can get to some Sanchez.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think he's going to be a part of my pitching portfolio, as probably most of these guys will, at least in some share. Alex, for you, on a slate where if Walker Buehler comes out, he doesn't necessarily have to get lit up by this San Diego offense. But let's say he comes out and just has an average start, gives up 4 runs, gives us a 27 for fantasy point performance on FanDuel, 15-ish on DK, somewhere around there. What are you doing if that's the expectation? Is that a night where you're going to spread out to a lot of these other options, or are you kind of going to concentrate on 1 or 2 of these guys and focus there, hoping that you get that average outing from Buehler and that they just exceed it? So in other words, are you trying to grab the field against an average Buehler performance, or are you trying to focus on a couple of these options against an average Buehler performance? I guess is what I'm asking, Alex.
On today's slate, I feel like there are 8 of 10 pitchers that are in the playable territory, where I have them all projected between 13 and 17 points. 4 points in pitching is not very much because the standard deviation for pitchers is in the 8 to 10 range. So that's only like half a standard deviation between the top and the 8th best. So I do feel like all 8 of those guys, the ones I'm crossing off are Daniel Castano from Miami and Justin Dunn for Seattle. The rest of the guys I feel like you can go with, and I kind of like going a little bit more contrarian. So I would be curious how you guys feel about 2 names, Trevor Williams against the Mets, and then Ryan Weathers against the Dodgers. I do feel like there's potential there, and the ownership numbers are really low.
Yeah, for me, Williams was projecting out fairly well, and I haven't gotten a chance to really dig into why. Not a pitcher I typically get excited about, but for this board, he's definitely in play. I like the price better at 6,800 on FanDuel. I don't love paying 8,500 for him on DK. Weathers wasn't really popping for me. I don't know a ton about him as a pitcher just yet, but only 5,600 on FanDuel. So if you're looking for that down and dirty cheap pitcher in a tough matchup against the Dodgers, could make some sense. Gunn, what do you know about Weathers?
On my chart, Weathers throws fastball sitting around 95 miles an hour, slider 30%, which is really above average slider, but it's a low sample size, and a little bit of a changeup. So mostly fastball, slider, and as Alex, I don't know if I can pitch against the Dodgers, man. Oh, that's tough. Both of those options are like hard to swallow pills, but I mean on this night, yeah, that could be the crazy play of the day that gets you there.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely more comfy with Trevor Williams, but I was getting some pretty significant power numbers on the Mets going up against him there. I was getting that yesterday, and they didn't totally come through, but we saw it on the other side, getting pretty good projections for me on the offense in both sides of that game. So it's not totally comfortable with him or with Joey Lucchesi going for the Mets, who I believe is the only name we've left off this list so far. Anybody have any love for him as an option? Alex, you didn't mention him as one of your cross-offs, so I guess you'll have a little bit of him.
Yeah, I think Lucchesi is interesting. he okay, so has he pitched this year so far?
I do not think so.
Okay.
Yes, he has 2 appearances.
Okay.
And his last appearance was only 55 pitches, building off of 36 the game before. So I just kind of wrote him off as not stretched out, but I don't know that to be 100% factual. And at 65, maybe he doesn't have to be.
Yeah, so I agree with that, where if he went 55 pitches in his last game, that makes me think that you're going to be lucky if you get 80. So that is one of the lower pitch counts of today's slate. He is a good pitcher and the matchup is good, which I wouldn't cross him off completely because I feel like in 80 pitches, guys can get to the end of the fifth inning, which is really what you're looking for on DraftKings. I want to go back to Brothers real quick because I see the Dodgers only have a 4.5 projected run total, which that seems pretty low for them. So that means Vegas is giving Weather some cred here, and he went 80 pitches in his last game, although it was only 3 2/3 innings. So I'm thinking that you're going to need some luck to go your way, but he stretched out. Really, really young rookie, 21 years old. So I'm kind of intrigued. Like mainly, I'm just looking at this 2% ownership. I'm like, the Dodgers strike out a decent amount, and if he can just limit runs a little bit, maybe he could sneak into the winning lineup. Did I talk you guys into Weathers?
If you're a believer to that degree, I'll roll out at least some shares. I'll say that much, no doubt about it. Former first-round pick, just looking at the traditional scouting a little bit, 55 grade changeup, like Gunn was saying, around a league average fastball slider, nice little traditional scouting grade, 60 grade command. So it seems like a kid who's polished probably coming in terms of being young, 21 years old, but any kid who comes in with a 60 grade command is usually at least a polished pitcher. So maybe we take a little bit of that in terms of his ability to go up against this tough Dodgers lineup. Currently 16th in baseball with a 23.9% strikeout rate against left-handed pitching this year. Over the course back to 2019, that's 22.4%, around league average, right around in the middle in terms of strikeouts. But they create runs pretty well against lefties and have a pretty solid ISO in that sample against lefties. So something to watch out for, but we're rolling dice on a slate like this with our pitching choices, so it definitely makes sense. I'll have some shares of them. Guys, we talked a lot of pitching. We'll get into the bats here in a couple minutes, or in just a minute. But we do have some business to take care of as always. You guys know about the site. You know that we cover so many different sports. But what you might not know is that you can get subscriptions to any different sport that you want or all the sports together. That's our Platinum package. That's the best value on the site. Whether it's weekly, monthly, annual, whatever term that you want, your best bang for your buck is going to be getting all the sports in the Platinum package. Provides projections, ownership, all our tools, access to our premium Slack where we're all hanging out, talking shop, answering questions all day. If you hear the little pings go off in the background while I'm talking or while my mic's hot, that's people DMing me with questions. We love talking shop and answering questions in Slack. So if you're a subscriber and you're not in there, jump in. But more to the point, if you're not a subscriber yet, $29.95 for the Platinum plan. All in for $30 a week, gets you all those different tools, get you our lineup builder, gets you access to the game plan show behind the scenes that Alex does a few times a week. Guys like Sean John and Steve Buzzard do them. Steve is the Colts on the top of your Fanduel and DraftKings contest boards. These guys get into small classroom type settings and we talk shop about the ways that we go about using the tools, the way that we make picks and think about these lineups. Yeah, I'm throwing myself into that group because I'm on the show on Fridays and Saturdays, even though I haven't won quite as much as these guys. But if you want to work with the top pros, Platinum sub, $29.95 all in. You get access to Slack. You get access to all our tools and content. Stop guessing, start winning. Awesemo.com. We're brought to you by Jock Market, like I mentioned at the top of the show. They've turned fantasy sports into a stock exchange, guys. Forget waiting until the end of the game to make money. Why not buy and sell shares of your favorite players in real time for real money with guaranteed payouts for all those shares at the end of the night? Daily markets for NBA, MLB, NHL, and PGA. You make real money every hour, minute, and second of any game. You use the pregame IPO to buy shares of your favorite plays. Then you buy, sell, or hold just like a stock during the game based on your own analysis. Download the app right now. Get started. Promo code Awesemo20. That's Awesemo, which you know how to spell, with the number 20. Gets you a $20 bonus on your first deposit. That's exclusive for our community. Awesemo20, $20 bonus. Jock Market. Check it out, guys. It's a great site. Moving on to some hitters. We've got, first up, you guys want to talk about some catchers? We've got a couple standout backstops on this slate. Gun, who's your favorite catcher?
Catcher. Let's see. Let's just say, I guess we'll go to DraftKings catcher. I have
the board talking baseball.
At the top of I have Wilson Contreras as my top rated, and I guess that's because he's batting second. I initially thought he might have an opportunity to lead off, but a 2-hole catcher is pretty interesting. So he's probably my favorite catcher, and then Buster Posey, a couple more homers on this road trip. Back at the house, maybe get a shot at that lefty. And historically, I do like Posey against lefties. So if that is something I can get behind, especially if he's right now got projected right behind Wilmer Flores and Longoria, like perennial lefty masher death row right there. So I could probably get behind some Posey as well. So Posey and Wilson Contreras are probably the top end, and then maybe some Christian Vasquez in the heart of the order. Have you ever played tiers on DraftKings?
I haven't, but I'm sure Alex has.
All right, so
yeah, definitely.
I looked this morning. The second tier had a couple of hitters. Mike Trout's in the tier, and so is Christian Vasquez. So clearly, Vasquez is competitive with Mike Trout tonight.
Yeah, that's basically the same guy. I'm sure they're selling right next to each other on top NFTs. Alex, how are you seeing the catcher position kind of across sites? And then maybe talk to me about like your favorite price and ownership play at the catcher spot.
Well, Contreras definitely stands out betting second, which is definitely the best spot in the order you're going to get for a catcher today. It's a positive platoon split versus Lucchesi. So he's definitely number one. The rest of the guys, if Will Smith starts, I think he's always interesting. He has a lot of power, but just doesn't really play every day. So we'll have to wait on that one. And then Vasquez, like somehow he's 5,100 on DraftKings, which is insane. But maybe that's like this pay up to be contrarian spot, which I don't hate.
Yeah, Vasquez guy is somewhat out of nowhere. 23 home runs and 521 plate appearances in 2019 for the Sox. 7 last year with a 283, 344, 457 slash. Created runs 15% better than the average. Doesn't cost that much on FanDuel because we don't have to roster a catcher there. Hits in the heart of that order. I think he makes a little sense. Kind of rounding off the position, I was getting a nice little power number on Will Smith. If he's hitting in the middle of that Dodgers stack, I definitely like that. We talked about Weathers being a potentially high upside kid, but I think it makes a lot of sense to throw some Dodgers stacks. And if Will Smith is in the middle of those stacks, I'm definitely going to have some shares of him. On the rest of the catcher, I'm not getting much for like Victor Caratini. I don't really see much need to go to a Chad Wallach, who I have in the projected here. I do agree on the Buster Posey call. Was there anybody that kind of stood out as maybe a low-owned sneaky catcher play that we haven't discussed here, or is it time to move on?
I think just whoever's in your stack, probably. Like usually catcher is one of those spots where there's not a ton of sense in taking a one off.
Yeah, that's one for me, unless you're getting one of these heavy hitting catchers who's at a super low price for whatever reason, then maybe you look to a one off. But yeah, I'm usually just dropping catcher along with my stack and trying to get to whichever the best potential options in terms of the batting order are. Moving on to first base. Let's say I'm just trying to pull all these different positions up with the position flex. Alex, considering we've got a lot of different options who can slot in at first base, do you have a favorite first baseman? And maybe tie that to your favorite stack. It's one of the best hitting positions in all of baseball typically. So I imagine your favorite first baseman is coming from one of your favorite stacks. Talk to me a little bit about first base.
Yeah, I think top first baseman tonight for me is Ohtani. He's been crushing it, and he's got a positive platoon split lefty versus righty here. So 37 or 379 ISO on the year for Ohtani. So he's really been raking so far. If you need a little bit of value, Matt Duffy, 2,400. He's batting 6th, so that's pretty high for someone that's 2,400. I don't hate just punting the position because any first base eligible guy you can get is going to have enough power to make some nice stuff happen for you.
Gun, what about you? Do you have a standout first baseman? Ohtani wasn't on my board at first base because he's not a first baseman on the Fanduel slate. You guys are lucky over on DK getting there, but he's in the outfield, and I agree with that in terms of him being a good Fanduel play. I like that. Gun, what are you thinking in terms of first base, either site? What do you like?
I obviously Ohtani sticks out as the top guy. Same team, Jared Walsh. I like that little Ohtani, Trout, Walsh 1, 2, 3, and then Upton's got a couple long balls in the last couple of games for him as well. So that's probably the most stackable 4 guys in a row for me on this slate in terms of just pop and OPS. So Jared Walsh as well. I said it before, I'm a sucker for Giants against lefties. So Wilmer Flores, first base eligible on DraftKings, he'd be up there as well. I might handcuff him to the aforementioned Posey. And man, that's kind of it. Darren Ruff, if you believe in a couple of at bats, he likely doesn't get through the whole game. Do like him against lefties, and then like Alex said, Matt Duffy. I can get behind that as well.
Like it. I like it. No Bobby Dahlbeck in the lineup for the Sox, so we can cross him off the board. I was just looking for some different lower-owned cheap options. They get Marwin Gonzalez hitting 7th. I don't really love that, but he's inexpensive if you really need it. Looks like Evan White going for the Mariners, hitting in the middle of the lineup. If you wanted to throw some darts with him against Nick Pivetta as part of your Mariners stacks, I wouldn't mind it, but going to him as a one-off, probably not a great play. I'm getting good numbers, of course, on very popular first baseman Pete Alonso in the middle of that Met stack that we talked about being the super chalk. It makes a lot of sense if you're rostering that stack to include Alonso, the biggest bat in that lineup, but you are swallowing a pretty significant ownership here. It's going to be very difficult to build that differently. On the other side of this one, do you guys have any love for Anthony Rizzo, lefty? Looks like he's getting not that much attention, under 5% ownership in my last update. Might be a little higher, but you guys, either one of you guys have love for Anthony Rizzo? Alex, what do you think of Rizzo on this one, lefty?
Well, lefty is always a spot that's interesting because it really presses the ownership. So that's one where I'll play him in the stack because like if you're stacking a team, obviously you're not expecting the starting pitcher to play most of the game. So that lefty matchup becomes less important.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I was looking at that one as well. You get him out, and I'm expecting that the Cubs might chase Lucchesi a little early today. Like I said, I'm getting pretty good marks on them. So if they do that, you might get 3 or 4 different, or well, 2 or 3, let's call it, plate appearances against a righty out of the pen for Rizzo, and get him on the right side of his splits. Did we miss anybody gun at first base, or can we move on?
Nah, I think we covered all the bases.
The high points, right? All right, very cool. Guys, hit the like, hit the subscribe down there. Got all kinds of good stuff going on. If you hit the subscribe, you won't miss a thing. The little notifications pop up when our shows go live. So we've got all sorts of stuff going on at the site, as you know. One of those things is the Awesemo Hall of Fame. If you win or place in the top 3 in a contest with our avatar as your avatar on either one of the sites in a contest that has more than 5,000 people, tweet that at Awesemo Hall of Fame, Awesemo HOF on Twitter, and then send an email to our support address, support@awesemo.com. I'm probably going to be the person getting it on the back end. That is my favorite part of my day in customer support, is when I get these emails and I get to award the free platinum month that you get for doing that. So all you got to do, come in top 3 in a contest with more than 5,000 people. That's the hard part. Do it with our avatar, then send us a tweet, send us an email. We'll get you a free month of platinum for doing that. Pretty great deal. Our pal Neil knocked himself a $100,000 win last night, but he also got himself a little freebie, and he tweeted us out and gave us a little shout out. So we're going to give him a shout out back. Congrats, Neil. That's an awesome win. And we've had a bunch of other people win them as well. We'll get shout outs for those folks as soon as I can put a list together, but there's a lot of them out there. It's great. Love to see it. Alex, you built a hell of a site with a lot of tools on it. Moving on, using those tools to find the best possible second baseman on the slate. Who do you like at second base, Alex?
At second base, let's see. Ty France is popping up as the top projected one, which that's kind of intriguing because I don't think many people are going to be stacking Seattle. I guess we haven't talked about them a ton, but all right, their ownership's 12%, so maybe that's not right. A lot of people are stacking Seattle. I guess he got a good matchup versus Pivetta, but he's batting second. He's a guy that has a little bit of power, and the other guy batting high in the order is David Fletcher, who doesn't have any power or stolen base upside. So this making me lean towards Ty France.
Yeah, I actually like the France call there. It does look like he's drawing some ownership, but there are, particularly on DK, you can get pretty far afield going down that stack a little bit, getting into the Kyle Lewis supreme talented kid who had a lot of injuries, but big time prospect in the outfield for them. Taylor Trammell, another high end prospect from the outfield for them. Dylan Moore, we saw have a nice year last year, second base outfield eligible, so you can work him in for the second base on the Mariners side. JP Crawford even hitting ninth, decent little wraparound option. I think there's some interesting things in play there for Seattle going up against a shaky Nick Pivetta. Gunn, how are you feeling about other second base options? We've got Jeff McNeil in that Mets lineup. We've got David Bote if you're going to the Cubbies. Alex mentioned a couple guys from the Angels. Just looking at the board, we've got Wilmer, who I know you like, is eligible at second base on the FanDuel slate. Out of those names or any others that are on your board at second base, Gunn, what are you looking at?
Yeah, so in my bond detector and my my personal model, Ty France is the number one guy for me. It's not like second base is that shallow, is that deep. It's really shallow, and that's why Ty France is up there. The guy that you mentioned there is Jeff McNeil. I'm interested. Brandon Nimmo's been dealing with a hip injury, and if he that lineup's not out yet, if he's not in the lineup, it's possible that McNeil leads off again. And then that would just be an incredible opportunity as a leadoff guy in that Wrigley game against a contact pitcher. So I would be on board with McNeil. I'm on board with McNeil no matter what, but leading off would definitely juice off his potential for me. I also have a Mlb Dfs projecting decently, and like you said, Wilmer Flores. I like him to be right there in the heart of the lineup, surrounded by Longo and Posey, if that's how the lineup rolls out. So yeah, no, second base is not that fun.
Not one of the highest end positions. Definitely not on this slate. I do like the McNeil one though. Excellent hit tool and very good on base skills. So yeah, if he's leading off, especially, that one's very much on the board, and maybe it would be a little bit of a differentiator and help offset some of that heavy ownership on that team. Moving on to the hot corner, third base. Usually another standout spot for offense in terms of real baseball. Looks like we've got a few options on the board. Alex Bregman kind of stands out for me on the slate, but he's getting a ton of ownership in that matchup against Alex Cobb. Alex Baker, who are you seeing as your top third baseman?
Yeah, Bregman looks solid. One contrarian option, it looks like, could be Justin Turner. I don't want to speculate too much because we don't have a Dodgers lineup yet, but the projected ownership is only 4%. Which seems a little bit low given that he's got the righty versus lefty matchup. He's 5,500 at Draftkings and 4,400 on FanDuel, so definitely overpriced. But you're going to need to spend up on some guys that aren't worth it to get a little different today. So that might be where I spend my money if I'm not going with Buehler.
Yeah, interesting little pay up to be contrarian spot there with him. And then honestly, also with Corey Seager, at least on DraftKings, where he's 5,600 at the shortstop position, which we'll get to in a second. But between Seager, Turner, and Will Smith, you're not getting a ton of ownership on DK. If you can figure out a good way to pay for it, that's a sneaky little stack against what we already talked about, a rookie pitcher. Could be an interesting spot for the Dodgers. Gunn, what are you liking at the hot corner?
So I'm on board with Turner again, another perennial lefty masher. My top rated guy right now is Rafael Devers. I got him batting fifth. He has my highest bomb probability in terms of starting matchup. So I do like him quite a bit. Looking past him, Bregman, Diaz, and then it gets really average. But the thing is that the average level today, there's some big names: Chris Bryant, Manny Machado, even Evan Longoria to an extent. So if you just want to bet on talent that might just be low owned, kind of on that Turner hunch, I'd imagine there's not a lot of ownership on Manny Machado as well at that price. So if you just want to bet on talent, Machado's been one of the better bats for the San Diego Padres so far this season. But Rafael Devers is probably going to be my top guy. Him and Turner kind of handcuffing ownership for me.
Yeah, I like both of those guys. Definitely love the spot for Devers. My second highest rated third baseman in my home run detector. I stole detector from you. My home run model, it's 14.65 on Devers and a 14.95 on Manny. So they're right next to each other at the hot corner. Like both options there. I think we touched on most of them. Just looking down the board. JD Davis, if you're going to those Met stacks, certainly interesting. I think that's pretty much all of the options at third base. Shortstops. Alex, who's your top rated shortstop?
Corey Seager is always an interesting one. He's a lefty tonight, so that might be a reason why you'd only play him in stacks. But certainly a very talented guy. The chalk, I guess, is going to be either Bogarts or Lindor because they're both pretty cheap on Fanduel, and I mean they're just stud players. So those are probably your cash options.
Yeah, guy who stands out for me for GPP on both sites is Javi Baez, hitting in the middle of that Cubs lineup, batting fifth, hitting from the right side of the plate against Joey Lucchesi, under 10% ownership on both sites, affordable on both sites. Gunn, what do you think about Baez, and are there any other shortstops on your radar?
Yeah, Baez, he might have got right yesterday. I don't know. He might curtain call that huge game. Carlos Correa is leading off for the Astros, and that's new. That doesn't happen a lot. So
yeah,
getting a leadoff shortstop, really, any position player that you can get lead off, but Carlos Correa is a talented bat. So if you're going to play both sides of the Alex Cobb sweepstakes, maybe that's definitely a key point of interest is to get Correa. And the thing about Correa is behind him is a very, very professional hitter, Michael Brantley, the highest batting average on the team, and usually one of the highest batting averages in baseball, just a 10% K rate. So if Correa gets on a double or whatever, like he's probably in scoring position if he or a good chance that he'll get a run tacked on if he's not not hit you a bomb. So I think Correa definitely deserves some mention. But I'm in agreement with all those other names that were just brought up. I think Javi Baez makes a lot of sense. And at the top for some power, actually Correa does have the highest power rate for me right now. Tatis is behind him. And we talked about Walker Buehler has allowed a lot of hard contact and a lot of barrel susceptibility. So maybe Tatis is like that, unlike just like Machado. He's really, really talented. No one's going to play him. Chipping a chair for a bomb.
Yeah, love going to those star type players when nobody else is, for sure. That's it makes a lot of sense. Guy that stands out, just looking at the Astros lineup, since you were touching on it there, I agree with everything you said. I love the ownership on DK, in particular on Correa and Brantley at the top. And then Yuli Gurriel across both sides. We didn't mention him as in the first base conversation, but had a great start to his year, hitting in the middle of a high-end lineup against Alex Cobb and nobody going to him. I think that's a very interesting spot as well in that. But we've got to move on. We got to talk about outfielders and then get into just listing our favorite stacks real quick. Alex, who is your favorite outfielder or maybe group of outfielders from a team that you're going to be using in a stack on your favorite stacks?
Let's see. Outfield is usually a great position to snag some value. So it looks like today is no exception. Kyle Lewis is only 3,100 on Draftkings, and he's batting fourth for Seattle. I think that could be the ticket if you need a cheap outfielder, because you were saying he's a pretty talented guy. He hasn't really played much this year so far, but last year he had a 175 ISO, 364 on base. So some solid numbers he's building on this year, and the price is just dirt cheap for a cleanup hitter.
Excellent. Yeah, I like that call. I'm going to be on the Mariners a little bit, hopefully a little bit more than the field. Like I said, 11 home runs in 242 plate appearances in that breakout last year. Kid who had multiple very bad knee injuries in the minors, but is finally making his bones in the pros. I think that's a great way to look at outfield. We all know, right, guys, it's not going to give you very much value if we tell you to play Mike Trout, that Mike Trout's very good. You can make the decision about whether or not you're going to ride the popularity with Mike Trout on your own. You kind of know about some of these guys. JD Martinez, you know he's an excellent power hitter. So, Gunn, in the outfield, looking at it the way that Alex just was for maybe some value, maybe some underrated guys, who are we potentially looking for in the outfield?
How about some Mitch Haniger if you want to mess with the Mariners here? In my bond detector, he's fourth out of eligible outfielders, and to start the season, 16 for 48. He's batting over 300. He's slugging over 600. He's got 3 bombs, 6 total extra base hits. Fenway, really positive park. So I might be talking to myself into some more Mariners than I expected prior to the stream. So I do like him. Jared Walsh is also outfield eligible. I mentioned him as first base guy when we were going position by position, so I don't mind him either. Hunter Renfroe is an interesting bottom of the lineup kind of bat with a little bit of power. I don't mind getting there. And then really, I'm waiting on this Mets. The Mets lineup actually came out while I was blabbering. So Luis Guillorme is batting leadoff, and Jeff McNeil's not in the lineup. So second base guy even worse. Yeah, so I guess Michael Conforto, he's right there fifth. I think if we mentioned Peter Alonso might be a menacing bat in that lineup. They pitch around him. A little bit of RBI potential for Conforto. So I like Conforto, but I'm really digging a lot of these Seattle bats that are a little higher in my model than I thought Mariners to be.
I'm all about the Mariners, and we're going to roll into our home run picks and our top stacks and get out of here. And I'm going to lead off. I usually throw it to you guys, but I'm going to lead off, and I'm going to take those Seattle Mariners going up against the Nick Pivetta, who I think is a little too chalky and not that good of a pitcher, getting a great power marks. And Mitch Haniger was my home run pick in my column today, so I'm going to steal it off the top just in case anybody else is thinking about it. So Mitch Haniger and the Mariners for me. Alex, favorite stack, top, and a home run pick.
All right, so favorite stack. Let me do my top home run pick first, I guess. This is a big if because they don't have a lineup and he's a catcher, but Will Smith, he had a 289 ISO last year, and so far this year he's at 220. So this is a guy that has tons of power. He often bats high in the order, and he has the platoon split in his advantage versus others. So Will Smith is my home run pick. As far as top stacks, San Francisco is kind of interesting. They're going up against Dan Castano, which is encouraging, and also San Francisco's park, although it's known as a pitcher's park because the weather is cool during the summer. This is the part of the year where that doesn't really affect them. So I think that the conditions are a little bit better than they normally would be compared to the rest of the games.
That's an interesting one. Not one that was really popping up on in much of our discussion either in terms of players on the team, other than some of the Wilmer and those guys. Gunn, I saw you shaking your head. Looks like Alex stole your team. Which one are you going with? One pick in a team.
You stole my bomb. He stole my stack. So I'm gonna get a little creative here. I'm gonna go Devers on the bomb, and then I guess stack wise, let's go land on some Chicago Cubs. It looks like wind could be blowing out, help out some fly balls a little bit more. And the Mets bullpen has been not great. So maybe 9 innings of positive opportunity.
Love it. That's a good spot. That was one that I wrote up in my article this afternoon. So, guys, we're right up on the 5 o'clock mark. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, stick around. We got NBA Deeper Dive with Lofty and Adam coming up. We've got Live Before Lock with Greg and Eric. We've got the MMA Strategy Show with Jason Floyd and Pete the Heat Rogers after that. Like, subscribe, hit the site. Brought to you by Jock Market. Check them out. Awesemo 20 gets you $20 on your first deposit. We're out of here.